Hi, everyone. Welcome to the inaugural SELLYs Awards celebration, the Social and Emotional Learning Leaders of the Year, hosted by CASEL. I'm Mark Brackett. I am a professor at Yale in the Child Studies Center and the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and also a proud board member of CASEL. To recognize outstanding achievements in the field of SEL, every year CASEL presents awards annually in research, practice, and public policy. Many of you may have seen some of these awards happen this week already. Today, I am honored to chat with one of the recipients of the Joseph E. Zins Award for Social and Emotional Learning Action Research. And here we have Tia Barnes. Just so you know, this award was founded in 2007 in honor of an amazing SEL researcher and practitioner, Joseph E. Zins. And so Tia, welcome. It's exciting to see you.
It's wonderful to see you too, Mark. Hi.
And many of you may not know this, but Tia actually had the opportunity to work in our center and collaborated with our team members and is still an amazing collaborator with many of the colleagues at the Center for Emotional Intelligence and is now an assistant professor at the University of Delaware. So Tia, let's just start off by, can you just share a little bit about who you are?
Oh, yes, sure. So I am, as Mark said, an assistant professor at the University of Delaware. I teach in the Human Development and Family Sciences program. I am a former special educator, and so I bring that lens to the social and emotional learning world. I'm also a former para-educator, and I think that that's also an important piece, which I guess we'll get into as we talk more about some of the research that I'm doing. And I think those are the main things that I'd want to share.
Great, thank you. So this award, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to see you get this award. It's about SEL research. And so I'm just curious, with where the world is today, what do you see as like what drives you, to do the research you do? Like, what are the things that we all need to understand better?
So my research focuses on the social and emotional well-being of minoritized populations. And as a special educator, that includes children with disabilities, but also children from racially and ethnically minoritized groups. And in addition to that, I've also done some work with those that identify as part of the LGBTQ plus population. And so one of the great things that I see happening now is that we are expanding SEL to really look at equity in ways that we can support the broader student population, and also how we can support educators, since we know that educators are bringing themselves to the school environment and that educators are going to influence, what we're seeing in the classroom in terms of climate and relationships with students. And so for me, that is really what drives me, is knowing that this work is being done and being a part of it and helping and supporting this to extend and for us to just gain the knowledge we can to help as many folks in school environments that we can.
Awesome. And so I guess I'm curious that with all the research that you've done thus far, like what are some of the key learnings, that you can share with everyone?
So I would say one of the key things that I've been focusing in on over the last few years has been the use of culturally responsive pedagogy in social emotional learning. And so from that literature, I would say one of the key things that I've noted is that there really isn't much that is out there on how we can adapt interventions culturally within the US. Like, we do have research on how to adapt SEL interventions for international populations, but not as many in the US, where we have a very diverse population. In addition to that, I would also say one of the other key findings is that we don't have much out there on the how-tos. So we know that all school environments look different, but we don't have a lot of work out there that supports schools in being able to adapt interventions for the students that they're serving. From the special education literature, one of the key things that I've noted, and that's been interesting to talk to both with SEL research and special education researchers, is that I feel like the two fields have so much information that they could be sharing with one another, but we're not really speaking to one another in the way that we should. And so I look forward in the coming years, especially with the work that I've been doing with several colleagues, in bringing those two fields together and having this knowledge that can support not just students with disabilities, but all students, since from that literature, we learn a lot about how to provide explicit instruction and how to individualize intervention for children that need it.
Really interesting. Can you give me some like specifics? Can you give me an example of something that you've done in the, to support classrooms in doing this work? Or, like I know about your Relate project.
Mhm. Yes. So what the Relate project is the Recognizing Excellence in Learning and Teaching project. And this was a project that I worked on or began working on as a postdoc at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. And I'm a co-principal investigator on the project with Dr. Chris Cipriano, who also works at the center. And with that work, some of the things that we've been doing is going into classrooms that are supporting children, particularly children with emotional behavior disabilities, and going into the environments to learn about the social processes that are occurring in the environment and how we can examine these social processes to determine the quality of the classroom to better support students who have emotional behavior disabilities. And so from that work, we've created a classroom observation tool that can be used in special education settings. And that has also led us to create a framework. So one of the key things we found that was more specific to special education settings is that we have multiple educators or multiple adults in the environment, just to meet the needs of the children. And so with that, we've created a framework called the Teacher Paraeducator Framework that looks at the collaborative relationships between educators. And that work, we've been continuing it right now. I just finished up a grant last year from the Foundation for Child Development. I was funded as a young scholar. And so with that work, I was able to do some pilot research on creating a intervention around teacher paraeducator collaboration to help in supporting that work climate for those adults and helping them and being able to provide quality interventions for the children in their classrooms. And I'm going to expand on that work, as we move into the future.
Sounds really comprehensive. Like I got to think about all these things now. I'm curious, besides all the amazing things that you're doing in your own specific research, what do you think that people like me, people who are also doing research in the field, what do you think we should be paying more attention to?
One of the things that comes to mind is SEL assessments. We know that schools are now using SEL more. They're spending money on these interventions, and so they're going to want to make sure that they're working. And so as we see more of an uptake in the use of SEL assessment is something that we need to be paying attention to for a couple of reasons. One, I'm interested to know whether or not SEL assessments are going to support us in being able to identify more children with internalizing needs. In the special education world, we see a lot of children who have externalizing behaviors being identified for things like special education services, but not many who have internalizing behaviors. And so this may be one way to give those children a chance to get the support that they need. I'm also curious and I guess a bit worried about whether or not SEL assessment is going to lead to an increase in the overrepresentation that we are seeing for particularly Black boys in special education. So we need to ensure that these assessments are valid, that they're reliable, and that they're unbiased. So that seems to be one of the key things that is on my mind right now as we move more into that world. Another thing that I think links to my work is SEL and equity. I do think that there needs to be a broader look at equity and SEL and whether or not SEL is supporting equity, how we can use SEL to support equity. And then also, I'm curious about how SEL is being used. Is it being used equitably across different school environments? So for example, do lower resource schools have access to SEL? And is SEL being used in some schools more to control behavior than to support those life skills? It would be interesting for us to see more research that looks at this across to see whether or not there are patterns that are coming up, just so we can provide this to practitioners and help in supporting them as we continue to see this growth in SEL. What about you, Mark? What do you think?
Well, this award is about you, by the way, but I think what you just brought up is something really important to us, which is that are the adults who are implementing in the way, we as the program developers have intended.
Mhm.
When I hear like things around treating kids differently, in pejorative ways,
Mhm.
it doesn't make me sleep well at night. When I think about SEL being used to control kids, like I was like, we never wrote about that.
Yeah.
Spend a lot more attention on around observing the adults who are implementing it.
We've already made the case for SEL effectiveness. So now how do we work with school populations to ensure that we're supporting them in being able to implement it based on, all of the different environmental contexts that they have. And that'll be interesting to see the role that we take as researchers in doing that, as we go into schools with that research practice mindset, and also how we go into schools and work with practitioners as partners in doing this work. I think that's going to be key to moving it forward.
I couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
And so it looks like the field's got a lot of work to do, but exciting work. I mean,
Yes.
when you think about it, the research to date has, I think, given us the confidence that we should keep going.
Mhm.
And in large part, due to the research that you do and others, it's only going to get better.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes about it.
Um, I guess my last question for you right now is, what's your hope? It's 5 years from now. What are the kind of questions, that you hope your research answers?
That's a great question. I would say the hope is that 5 years from now, we're in a space where we have supported that teacher-para collaboration. So teachers and the adults in their classroom are able to collaborate more effectively. They're able to feel a better sense of well-being in the classroom because they have these positive relationships with their coworkers in the everyday basis, that children with disabilities who are in these classrooms are able to see models of effective peer relationships. And I also hope that we are further along in terms of supporting schools in adapting social emotional learning, particularly because we know that schools now are definitely, adapting social emotional learning interventions more now than ever. And so as we move into this place of implementation, I would hope that within the next 5 years, my work can support schools in being able to better support the broader student population, and not just the children who tend to be in their general education environments, but all students.
It's amazing to see all the work you're doing, and I'm so glad that you're still a collaborator with our center. And I just want to say thank you, and I'm enormously proud of everything you've accomplished, and just I don't think anybody could be more deserving than this Joseph E. Zins Award. So congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you so much.